Hey, 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 good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening to all of you out there. Hey, so have you ever had one of those days where, well, I'm not going to say things are going bad, but the weather now, well, depends on when you're watching, listening. The weather now is crappy. Rain, wind. So the other day, I'm out there just kind of doing some yard work, and all of a sudden, here comes a torrential downpour. My fish pond is just flooding. I'm out there with a bucket bailing all that water out, and then all of a sudden, I hear snap, crackle, pop, and there goes a tree behind me in the backyard, falling down. Branches are coming down, and the big tree is right next to the studio. Talk about panic mode. I had no idea what to do. I'm sitting there grabbing a ladder thinking, do I climb up this thing or no, it's too windy? What do you do when that happens? What do you guys do? Have you ever had anything like that happen where all of a sudden something is about to go tragically wrong and you got nowhere to go and nothing to do but panic? Well, needless to say, nothing fell on top of the studio. I didn't have to panic. I didn't have to worry about anything because as quick as it came in, it was over. So, anyhow, let's get into what today's topic is about. And it is about addiction, but it's more about the person who is the associate or the friend of, or the brother or the sister, husband, wife of the actual addict. So my guest today is actually a lawyer and a writer. Her name is Michaela Canterbury, and her memoir, this is her first book that she's ever written, is called Sister Siren. So yeah, you kind of guessed it. This is about her being the sister of the addict. So we're going to talk a lot about, what are the signs that we have that we can say, oh my gosh, I'm becoming an enabler or I am codependent and things like that. But before we get into any of that, we have this great little banter, communication going back and forth. We talk about music, some of the artists, and then it actually leads right into what we're going to talk about, and that's addiction. So just a heads up, Michaela, her personality is infectious. She is so much fun to listen to. So sit back, relax, listen, have a good time. So if you're ready, let's do it. Hello.
Hi, how are
How are
you?
you?
Jinx, I mean,
Jinx.
I'm well. How are you?
Good. You know what? I'm having a difficult time because what's funny is, last time we spoke, I had hair and I shaved my head off, and this is crazy how much padding hair gives because my headphone is slipping and falling off.
Slip sliding away.
Yeah, oh, great song. Yep.
You know, the
So,
nearer your destination and the more you keep slip sliding away.
yep, yep. It's fantastic when people know the good old songs.
Yes. And when people say
Yep.
something and then you just go right into the chorus and everybody joins in.
Yes.
Beautiful thing.
So, yeah, those were the days when the songs were more appropriate and good.
Oh, you are so right. That's why I keep bringing them up. You know, like with my kids, I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old, and when they were little, I would be like singing the songs, and they'd be like, "Mom, do you know who sings this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Blondie," or something, you know. And they're like, "Yeah, let's keep it that way." And I'm like, "No, no, no! You need to hear these, and you need to hear me singing them because they inform my life, which thus informs yours."
You know what is amazing? And I know we're kind of off topic right now about this, but that is what's so crazy is for, I don't know your age, but for us, I'll just say for us, and maybe
Hmm.
for the generation of now, but songs, music really, I think, help form or shape us. And I know that's probably the same now, but I think more so back then as far as the lyrics go.
Dude, and it's not off topic. I'm 50. I just turned 50 fortunate. So there's that. And my sister, which is what we're going to be talking about, is my book, Sister Siren, a nonfiction about addiction. I feel God and how to have an addict. But look what she just gifted me. Boop, boop, ba-doop. I
Uh,
heart him. Okay? I heart him. And one of my biggest regrets was never seeing him in concert because I always thought he'd be around and I always thought that he had more to create. And I'm like, I'm going to save him in my pocket. So when I see him in the future, he'll have so much more. So like I intentionally did not see Prince when I could have, thinking, oh, he's going to be around. He's a good guy. But he, like my sister, took pain meds and yeah,
yeah.
was found in an elevator like he wrote about. But anyway, I
Yeah.
mean, but you're right. Those songs are like so informative. You know,
Yeah, we're talking about him. I always little red Corvette.
so many good songs. So many. So
Yeah,
many.
but you know, your sister is one of the fortunate ones, and Prince and other performers and other people, everyday people, were unfortunate. Um, and like you said, he went all by himself in his house, but in an elevator, alone.
Mm, I know.
So,
In
but
and in pain. Yeah, alone and in pain. And it's just that, and that's what this is all about. It's stepping in because
it,
whether you are an addict or you love an addict, you feel alone. And the thing is, you're not.
mm-hmm,
It's all
that's so
about
true.
stepping in with love, you know? Like they don't either feel worthy or they're ashamed or there's stigma and then on the other side there's like this feeling of betrayal and it's like we just need to all like, step in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Michaela Canterbury, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we're the book that you have published is more of a memoir, but it's about addiction because you lived in love, an addict, and that would have been your sister. So, uh, yeah, today if we can talk a little bit about maybe the different signs that might be there for us to recognize an addict, how to live and love an addict, which is difficult at times. How to, I think what's really important is how to live and love without being a codependent, because
Mm.
we can get trapped in that. And I think oftentimes people who live and love an addict don't realize that they are um, have become a codependent. And maybe some of the things where we talk about, the things not to do, maybe triggers or whatever it might be. But, and then we're definitely going to talk about Sister Siren, your book.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you
yay,
so much.
welcome.
So much. I'm so excited to talk about these issues and answer these questions because they're prolific. And I had the same questions. I didn't know. I mean, this like fell into my being, fell into my lap. And so I know these things in retrospect because I lived through it. And so and that's what the book Sister Siren's all about, is sharing what I learned, like how to spot a high functioning addict, because that's my sister was a high functioning addict. I had no clue that she was an addiction and how deep it was. We talked briefly before that there was um, people can be addicted through pain medication. They have legitimate injury, legitimate pain, and suffering, and that's how my sister got addicted, and other people that we love in our lives, celebrities, and whatever. That is can be a gateway, so to speak. To addiction. And so seeing the signs now in retrospect as to, ooh, that's how that happened. Oh, that's what that was. I know that now. I didn't at the time. And because I mean, I've known my sister her whole life, right?
Right. Yes.
There's things that like it would make sense. Her responses to me made sense, and I love her so much that I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And then I look back on it, and there's 13 years between my sister and I, so she's my younger sister. And you mentioned at the beginning, at the top, that about codependency and such. Some people may characterize that as enabling, but I think those are like really close, maybe even fraternal twins. Codependency and enabling is you love someone so much and you think you're helping, and their health and wellness becomes your priority and not theirs. So then you start doing the stuff for them, thinking that you're helping.
Right.
And I really did think I was helping, and I was not.
Well, yeah.
So
I mean, because we say, well, I love that person, so I'm going to do everything and anything to help them. But a lot of times, that help just is not helping, or at least not in the right way. And also, an addict doesn't affect just themselves. It affects those around them. And then that's where that enabling and codependency and everything else comes into play, because all of a sudden their life really becomes your life.
mhm.
So that's, I,
Absolutely, especially if the addict has children. Or in my sister's case, she
mm,
had dogs. She had fur babies. But if there's children involved, and then I mean in our community, I'll just say, or even any society, it's love is like this beautiful four-letter word, and then with that word, I'll say oftentimes, we define that as an obligation or a responsibility in the name of love. There's another song I could kick into right
yeah,
there, but I won't. But like in the name of love, I'm going to do this, and since I'm 13 years older than my sister, and I always took care of her. I basically raised her. Our parents worked really hard, doing what they were doing, and so I felt responsible for her. Like this was
yeah,
my failure, you know, or that it was a failure at all, and then not seeing, what it really was through my glasses. So anyway, it's very easy to swish into enabling or codependency and lose ourselves in that. The people who love addicts, very easy to fall into that. Now, I apologize. I don't know if you can hear that helicopter. There's a helicopter that
yes, I
just
did.
I apologize. I live in the valley of Eagle River, and this rarely happens. And I apologize. So we have military sometimes that does that. Anyway, sorry about that. I got off course. But anyway, having a relationship with your own self to know how to step in with the person that you love, you have to love yourself first. And
Hmm.
when you're wanting something for someone more than they want it, oh, that's that's a sign right there. And so step back to discern how you can step in with love, not with resentment, not with fear, and this takes work. Oh, dude, it
Yeah.
takes work because, and then recognizing, ooh, hey, this is fear. And I write about this in my book, is that I meet with these what I call red flag feelings, RFFs, and they're showing up for a reason. I call them my girlfriend posse in effect. Girlfriend fear shows up. She wants to tell me something, so I need to sit down with her and figure out what's going on. And an example is, I was afraid my sister was going to die from her heroin and meth addiction. I was afraid I would have to identify the body. I was afraid I would have to tell my parents, our parents. I was afraid I would have to deliver the eulogy. I was afraid of all of that,
Hmm.
which prohibited me from stepping in with her healthy wise. But when I started meeting with the fear, the red flag feeling of fear, then I I wrote her obituary so I would be able to step into that and tell our community what a beautiful woman my sister is and what happened here. And
I
then when it
I,
came
I want to
down, yeah,
I want to step back for a second here because you said that she was high functioning, and there are so many high functioning addicts, and you don't know or you can't tell, or it's the last minute. I before we continue with this part, I was just wondering, what was that sign that all of a sudden you went, "Hey, I think my sister has an addiction,"
hmm
and how did you approach her? And then we could continue. Um,
yeah, no,
well,
thank you.
w-
I often get ahead of myself, so thank you, Chuck, for saying, "Hey, slow down, Michaela." I get so excited about this to share everything that I just start going off. Anyway, I had to be hit over the head with a 2x4. Her soul sister girlfriends um, uh, went to our mother and met with my mother, and my dad was fishing, and my said, "Hey, she's an addict and she's using heroin, and she's toggling between heroin and meth, and her husband gives it to her, and she's got a problem." And then my mother called me in a dither. That's an understatement. um, uh, um, and that's how we learned. We didn't see it, Chuck. Her
mm-hmm.
soul sister girlfriends came to us, and then there was this whole process of, I mean, things for me started to make sense. I was like, oh, that's why she never invites me into her apartment. you know? Oh, that's why she's always sick. She's not sick, she dope sick. Now I
Mm-hmm.
know. I was like making chicken noodle soup and pumpkin cookies and putting it on her doorknob, and when she was sick, and then she was also being overwhelmed at work, uh, and then her bosses, her supervisors um, uh, weren't giving her the keys to the building, and were decreasing her caseload. And she would, blessedly, fortunately, we're still talking, right? And she's like, I think they're edging me out. I think they're edging me out of my job. I think they're blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and I'm a small business owner as well. I'm like, oh my, well, if my person was sick all the time and wanted to keep odd hours, I wouldn't give them the keys either. But I still love my sister. So I'm like, still, I'm rationalizing, but I'm not rationalizing. Anyway, so some of the signs are they can't keep up with their workload. There's always a crisis. They're always sick. Their physical appearance begins to change. My sister ended up, started to put on weight, and she was an elite athlete. She was a college athlete for D1 program, and she was going to try out for the, I don't know, the soccer team for women in Washington. I think it's called the Sounders or something. But anyway, she chose the education route rather than that. Anyway, so she was not taking care of her body, and she was wearing layers, and she was wearing things that covered her up. Like she would part her hair, and then have it come over her eye, because
Mm-hmm.
now I know there's this thing where you pick your eyebrows. Addicts do this. It's an obsessive condition, and they pick their eyebrows. And so anyway, she was covering things up. She was dressing in layers. She's gaining weight. There was always a crisis, whether it was a flat tire or she was sick. Always like out of medication is what she would say, and and always needed money, always needed um, cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what you're saying here too is you found out through a friend, and so I think oftentimes many of us would discount a friend and say, "Well, that's my sister, or that's my brother, or that's my whatever. I know them better." Well, it's not necessarily true that you know them better because they might be your sibling or whatever. But how truly, when we get to a certain age, your friends become closer, I think, and know your habits probably more than what your siblings would. So, what I'm getting alluding to is we need to listen to their friends who are outside people as well. Not just say no. That's my sister or my brother. There is no way, and I don't believe you. We
You are
need to
so
we
right.
need to listen to those people.
That is exactly what my mom did. Okay, so my mom, PhD, head of her department at UAA. I mean, we come from a family of high functioning professionals. Okay, my dad's a trial lawyer, I'm a trial lawyer, my mom's a PhD, and then she had this side hustle of operating a nonprofit and graduating people, getting their GEDs and English as a second language, yada yada. So then my mom is like, what do they know? What do her
Mm.
girlfriends know? And like, she was in totally in this denial thing, and I'm like, Mom, we've known these women since they were going to prom and playing soccer when they were 6. They have no reason to lie to us. They love Kaylin. Come on. So then the whole family, my whole family is like in this acceptance, denial, grief, yada yada. We got to work through that before we can even start stepping in with love to support Kaylin. So that was like a whole process, and that's like where the whole self-care stuff comes from. So, and then dealing, stepping in with my parents, where my dad's like, well, I know I raised her right.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
right, and then they start blaming each other, which was like total freaking breakdown, which was also awful, and so getting through these different machinations that each, now there's my dogs are going, I'm sorry again. These different machinations that each of us have, whether it's grief, whether it's denial, acceptance, feelings of betrayal, and then respecting other people's limits for their relationship with the addict. Like my
Hmm.
relationship with my sister is not the same as my mom's with her younger daughter, or my husband's with his sister-in-law, or my children, whether they're adults or below the age of majority, and their auntie. I'm not going to tell them how to step into their relationship with the addict that they love.
Yeah.
I can only do me, and they got to do them.
Yeah. I would imagine it's a different approach for different people, different situations. But I think the one thing that is equal across the board is accusation. You don't want to go in and accuse that addict, or even the outside, like you're saying, your parents will start saying, "Well, I raised her right. Maybe it was you that did something." We don't want to start accusing each other or that addict of, you know, I'm getting a loss of words, but accusing people puts them on that defense, and then all of a
There's
sudden
no blame here.
we get nowhere.
Right. There's no blame here. This
Mm-hmm.
happened, and that's basically
Right.
like the first chapter of the book is how did this happen? Because my mom would always ask that. How did this happen? Was it something? Did we fail her? Did we do something? Like everybody thinks. At least I'm speaking from my own self, and then what I heard from my mom. So me and my mom thought we did something wrong. My dad didn't. He thought he raised her right. What he did. He did a great job. But what did I do to contribute this? And I lambasted.
Yeah.
I lambasted myself. I mean, I represented her in car wrecks. I'm a trial lawyer, like I said. I got her a lot of money for car wrecks, and I know it just went into her system, and so I felt terrible about that. But then that's where that self-love comes back in. You've got to take care of yourself and become at peace with that, so you can step into love the addict that you
Mm-hmm.
love. You're right, it does
Yeah. So
no good to assign blame here anywhere, even on the addict. I mean, this
right.
happen. Let's get beyond that and, do what you need to do with your relationship with this person that you love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I said, it's blame has nowhere to be in this situation. It is what it is, and let's see what we can do about helping you. And something that you mentioned and said that, you know, you and your mom both kind of felt like, well, what did we do wrong? And then I think that's where a lot of the people who are living with the addict fall into that position where now all of a sudden they are trying to help to fix, remedy the situation where they thought, I did something wrong. I need to fix this. I need to fix the person. And that, I think that's probably the wrong way of going about it. You're not there to fix because you think you did something wrong.
Exactly, exactly. It's how can I step in to love this person? How can I, Michaela, love Kaylin, my sister? This
Yeah, and
relationship.
so how were maybe a couple, two, three things that you did? How did you find the way to love your sister, but and inevitably help her in a recovery?
hmm Well, it waxed and waned. I mean, there were times when, remember when I said, uh, I mean, there were times I had to, I wanted her recovery more than she did. And when I had those
Mm-hmm.
realizations, and that was like a red flag feeling for me, I would have to step away. And some people call it detach with love. I call that to me sounds like I'm cutting them off.
Yeah.
And I reframed it to love from afar. I, and I'd step back into myself with in getting back into to peace, if you will, with the fear or the betrayal, or I was getting mad at her because she wasn't doing things the way I thought they should be done. Like she should be going to 12-step meetings. She should be in rehab. And I do all this stuff to get her ready to go to rehab, and she's just not showing up. Or, I got all these appointments set up, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I want this. I want this too much. And when I started letting off the gas for that, you know, uh, she found her recovery her way. I was always there,
Mm-hmm.
always loved her. I would do things like, so when it was, I stopped. I stopped driving her to 12-step meetings, and I stopped driving her to rehab. Um, but we would talk about her wanting recovery and how to go about that. I would show up with what she needed. Like I went to the trap house with a flat of water. I would have a first aid kit. I would have protein bars. I would love the way that I could with limits, so it wasn't hurting me or hurting my family or taking away, where I was losing myself in the situation. I love you, but this is how I can show up. And no, that man cannot get in my car. You can. And if you ask nicely, we can go here. So it's discerning what my personal limits were, what I could do. Like for my mother, and my mother had different limits. My mother couldn't even take calls from my sister because it was just too much, and it was too much for my dad. So there were things I could do that others could not. And so each person needs to get in tune with themselves about how they can show up in in love for this person, what they can do. Sometimes it was just bringing her a case of water, Chuck. Other times
Mm-hmm.
it was yeah, I'll take you to your rehab appointment.
Do you think it's kind of like one of those things where it's, um, what can I do to help them rather than I did this for you, I did that for you, and I took you here and I took you there, and like you said, and you didn't show up or you didn't do this. It's that part of the I. All of a sudden, like you were saying earlier, and we are talking about, it becomes what I want for them,
Right.
and it's all about. It's almost like it's about me now. I'm here to fix you.
100%. And it was what we were talking about earlier. How can I fix this? And that was
Mm-hmm.
my mindset, because I always fix things. I'm that girl. I'm an overgiver. I'm a fixer. That's what I do. I make everything right, and chip chop chip. Just do it my way and we'll be good, and you'll be recovered and life will be great. We'll be back to listening to Prince, right? And he wasn't doing it, and we weren't listening to Prince, and it was making me mad. So I needed to just hold space sometimes, and sometimes I just needed to, you know, pray, you know, journal, take care of myself, recognize how this was affecting and impacting me, and others that I love. And I mean, if, when we did have an intervention with my sister, and it was just a beautiful thing
Mm.
how everyone showed up, uh, and said their, I'm just going to say peace, Peace, not Piece, because it was all, we all stepped in with love. There was no doubt that she was loved, and there was no blame. It was a, we love you and we're here, but we can't have this.
Yeah.
This can't come to the house with the kids. That doesn't mean I don't love you. We can, I can buy you a meal. I can, we can meet over here. Um, but everybody, like I said, everybody's limits on loving an addict are different and personal to them. And so getting in tune with that, um, you're right. It's not about me fixing the person. It's how can I step in to love and support this person. They're not at their best. They're at a very difficult time in their life.
Yeah.
What can I do to support, not fix, but just kind of be like some synovial fluid in there, if you know what I mean.
And with this too, like you said, different people approach things differently. So I think sometimes people are, we'll just use the word abrupt, and they say, "I'm not going to be around you. I can't." And now that the addict may feel abandoned, which is probably the wrong thing to do. Which I would imagine the correct thing to do if you cannot be around that situation is really explain. This is affecting me. I love you, but I don't want the way that it's affecting me to affect you negatively. But
Hmm.
I am here, and if you want to be spiritual, I'm here for you in spirit, and I do love you. So, I'm with you. But
Hmm.
this is just again me just thinking about that is a feeling of abandonment. If you're just telling somebody, I'm not going to be around you. There's no way you're taking drugs. I'm out of here. See ya.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that a wrong approach or a wrong way to think of it, or is that?
Well, you're right. It is abrupt, and it's it's kind of prickly, you
Mm-hmm,
know.
yeah.
And I'll just it's reminiscent of my father. My father can be large and in charge, and this is I, I can do this. I mean, at for example, at the intervention, um, uh, he offered to financially support my sister in rehab, and that's a big blessing and gift to do. But I can't be around you. I can't see you like that. And he got softer. It hurts too much to see
Mm-hmm.
that. I used to see I'm used to seeing this athlete run across the field, loving her dogs, all these things. And so I feel explaining why that is helpful to the person that you love. And the,
Yeah.
we said that I said I can't have you at the house. I can't have you near my kids. It's too dangerous. The company you're keeping is dangerous, and I cannot have that. It's dangerous for my own dang self. I'm showing up in my hockey mom car. Going to these places. Like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I'm like I can't do this anymore. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I can't. I'll meet you here. This is where I can meet you. This is what I can do.
Yeah. Um, this I don't know if you want to answer this, but because you said that the person that was providing the drugs to your sister was her husband, and I hear that more often than I thought or think that I would. That it's somebody close to you, um, who either takes the drugs, but they aren't an addict, but they take the drug. But all of a sudden, you have that addictive personality, and you take it, but they keep on giving it to you. My question is, did was part of the remedy to cut that relationship, and does that help the person?
Excellent question. And I guess I want to be a little clear is that I believe my sister's um, way into addiction occurred when she was a preteen, when she broke her ankle at the Arctic Winter Games. And so
Okay.
when I look back on her life, because I've known her whole life, um, I have formed the opinion that she became her body, mind, and spirit became addicted to pain medications when she was a preteen. Shortly after she broke her ankle at the Arctic Winter Games, I mean, and that happened in Canada. They were given her hydrocodone, oxycodone as a preteen, okay? And then after that, she's diagnosed with, assessed with ADHD, which is and given another medication, which is basically meth light. And so her life was going that way, and my parents
Okay.
were doing what the doctor said. And so when she's performing at a high level, she's getting A's and B's, she's getting scholarship, she going to school, she's getting, degrees with initials after her name and stuff. And she was the captain of the soccer team, and he too was the captain of the soccer team, the man that she married.
Ah,
And so they were both high functioning people. And it uh, carried on. And so that relationship they did get divorced. And however, he found recovery. I understand that he is in recovery and he is in a good place. And my sister was very supportive of him finding recovery. And so they still communicate. I'm getting truth bumps talking to you about this because there's no doubt they love each other, but
right.
that could not happen. And so they did go away and they found recovery their own selves, not together.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because sometimes it's the relationship can be a volatile one, but separately they can, like I said, they love each other, and then they can find their own way of um, finding recovery. And I think that, at least for me, saying I think we should be clear that addiction and recovery isn't just an overnight thing. Addiction and recovery isn't a 3 month thing. It isn't a 1 year thing. I think once you're into that situation, it becomes um, a lifelong recovery. You're every day you are. It's a recovery process all the time. I could be wrong, but I hear that from friends.
Well, and relapse is real. Relapse is a
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so, and another thing that I learned is relapse is part of recovery, where you're learning, oh, where I stumble, why I stumble for
Yeah.
the addict, and even for people who love addicts. I mean, when if I get all judgy McJudger or overgiving or whatever, those are my little things, right? That I gotta look out for and keep up with. But same with the person who is an addict is that when they're in recovery, it is a lifelong thing. It is a life,
Yeah.
and keeping at it. Oh, there's always homework.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to make clear too is we're talking about your little sister and addiction recovery, and we talked about drugs, but addiction could be anything, really.
Absolutely.
And what you're talking about, and I'm sure with your Sister Siren book, it's your memoir, but people can read it and they could translate that from drugs to a sex addicts, from drugs to alcohol, from whatever it is. Maybe even shopping addiction. I don't know.
Gambling,
But,
hmm
you know,
video
so
games.
yeah, yeah, right, right. So with your book, Sister Siren, which can be purchased on Amazon and I would imagine a number of other bookstores, why did you write the book?
I wrote the book I
Be
needed.
truthful. Come on.
I wrote the book I needed. I mean, I was like, when this happened, I'm like, I was going at it like I would a case in my law office. I'm like looking for experts. I'm trying to find the checklist, to fix it, like we talked about earlier. Okay, chip, chop, chip. I got this. I couldn't find anything. Nothing, and so I wrote the book I needed, and I have a glossary of terms in it because I always thought DOC was Department of Corrections, being the lawyer that I am, but no, it's drug of choice. So I have a glossary of terms, things that I learned, and I also the tools, tips and tools that worked for me, which includes prayers and poems and routines, like the what I call morning well-being time, which helped me deal with and step in with my fear with my sister, my resentment towards my sister, so I could be an effective lover of an addict, getting beyond the fear. So that's not easy, and these are the tools that help me. So I wanted to share them with people, and then I share the stories about some raw moments, so people aren't scared, so people know they're not alone, and this can happen to anyone. And my sister wrote the prologue, and my dad wrote the epilogue. So, and our intervention letters are in there. So I wanted to get this information out, to know, so people know that they're not alone when they love an addict, and that addicts know that they're not alone. That there's a community, and we're out here, and come on now, and you can love an addict. It's not easy,
Yeah.
but it can be done.
Yeah. Not that I'm an expert or read any really books on addiction, but I have never heard of one that provides a prologue by the addict and an epilogue by somebody who is like, not me, not the. And then, like you said, the intervention letters. I think this could be very, very, not just, it's very, very helpful and useful, I think, for the person living with the addict. Hugely.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
the subtitle is a field guide on how to love an addict. So I kind of do it like I love nature and walking in nature, and I like plants and birds and stuff. And so I was like, when I was writing this, I'm like, because I use my field guide for identifying birds and plants and flowers. I'm like, that's what this is. This is like a field guide, so you can identify and figure it out. So
I
that's the
mean, that is an
subtitle.
excellent way to put your memoir. The book is it's a field guide, and especially since you put in some of the terms in there, the acronyms, because I would have thought something different too. I would have thought Department of Correction is exactly DOC. Why not? Not drug
Yeah.
of choice. I'm not in that arena, so I would not have known that.
Right, and I also
So,
define those terms between, I relapse, rehab, recovery. I mean, these terms were being thrown at me remember when I told you I was hit by over the head by a 2x4 with the girlfriends, the soul sister girlfriends? They're throwing these terms at me. I didn't know. I mean, I live in Alaska, so there's a lot of, the military does a lot of acronyms for things like that. I'm like, what'd you do? So I had to define this to know what I was getting into.
wow. Uh, Once again, Sister Siren is your book. And how are things going now? With the family, with your sister, the relationship, everything's good. She's in recovery.
Yes, thank you for asking. It's been over 4.5 years that she has been in recovery. We have a wonderful relationship. We have like the relationship I prayed for. Like, we're both adults. I'm not treating her like a kid. She's not acting like a kid. We are grown women. We meet for dinner every Friday. We call them sister dates. Our mother has Alzheimer's, and my
Sorry.
dad had a stroke a year and a half ago, and so he had brain surgery, and he wrote that epilogue shortly after the brain surgery, actually. And so my sister and I are able, another thing I prayed for, because I was so afraid, Chuck, that my sister would die, and I would be with my parents. I'd have to take care of my parents all by myself.
Yeah.
And my sister and I are able to step in not only do we have our own wonderful relationship, we're hiking mountains, we're walking our dogs together, all this good stuff, but we're able to step in together to have a relationship with mom, even though she requires me to call her Dr. Kelly now. She's like, only my children call me mom. You can call me Dr. Kelly. I'm like, oh, okay, Dr. Kelly. But we get to step into this other brain disease that has affected our family, this other disease of Alzheimer's, and then my dad's brain trauma, and step in together to support our parents. And these two, or these also are difficult diseases and traumas to the brain that make loving this person, and that's where I learned, love the person, hate the disease, hate the trauma, hate the disease, love the person. All that other stuff, just take it aside. You go, okay, Dr. Kelly, it's just not time for a bath today. Okay, we're not going to do it. I can still love my mom, you know. Anyway, life is great, as great as it can be with
Good.
everything that we have going on, you know? I mean, caring for our step. I mean, what better thing to step in to care for our parents together? I got what I prayed for.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, there's one word that you use in there that we didn't say at all throughout this entire session, and that's disease. And addiction is a disease. So it's
Affects the whole family.
Yeah, it does. It affects everyone around the addict. But I just want to add, and I'm sure that I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but I think that we can all say that if you're an addict, you're not alone. The other thing is, there are people who love you 100%, whether they can be there or not. They do love you, so don't forget that. You know.
Right. Right.
This has been wonderful. It's been, can I use the word inspirational? Because you have such a great personality, and I think those who are going to watch or listen to this and read your book, Sister Siren, will find your personality in those words in the pages, and I hope that it can really bring the families, bring people together.
I hope so too.
So
I hope so too. And thank you. It's very, very kind of you to say.
it's the truth. So,
Make me blessed.
thank you. Hey, you've made it to the end, so I want to say thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and please remember, this podcast is available everywhere podcasts are available. And if you want to, you can, of course, always go to amazingpeopleamazingthings.com, and the podcast will be there both in video format and in audio. The other thing to keep in mind here, or to remember, is remember to have your pets spayed or neutered. Thanks.